So my name is Matt Neznanski. I'm a journalist. Some of you know from my work from the Gazette-Times. I'm excited about the future, despite what everybody says, and I want to talk about why. So for more than 100 years, hundreds of years, journalists have gone out into the community. They've found stories. They've brought them back. They've gone out to the four corners of the world, and they've brought them into the newspaper, the daily edition. Well, there's only so much room in a newspaper. So the process of what got left in and what got taken out came to be known as gatekeeping. Well, when web publishing came along, the gates were flooded open. And so people found themselves having to go through and filter information for themselves. And there's plenty of fantastic tools out there to do just that. But they started saying to themselves, you know, all that stuff that was in the paper, all that stuff that was on TV, that wasn't all the news that happened that day. You were holding out on us. And so there's kind of an animosity about that. So now that you've overthrown the tyranny of journalists, what now? Maybe a story. At the turn of the 20th century, there came this invention that took people around kind of like a carriage, but it missed the thing that everybody thought it should have, a horse. So they called it a horseless carriage. So early automobiles were essentially defined by something they didn't have. So journalism is in the same position. It's in a crisis. It's surrounded by questions of legitimacy and value. It's being defined and defining itself by what it isn't anymore. But I see that as an opportunity to reinvent ourselves, our work, and our relationships with the community. So, when the slide comes, what's this? It's journalism. And I think it's fantastic. And it can happen any place, any time, by anybody. I'm a professional journalist, and I still think there's a role for us in this, but I think we need to look at how the role is changing. Journalists can act as guides to the community. We can break community-wide stories. We can monitor government. We can connect people who aren't naturally drifting towards each other and introduce them to each other. We can also act as guides to stories. We can talk about how your government works. We can show the stories that we're working on, how they're progressing, the kind of questions we're asking of people, what they're asking of us, what we think is important and what you think is important. And also as a guide to access. I really think that the next fight is going to be over who a journalist is. And so reporters have long stood for open access to government and information, and we need to be visible and active partners in that. The case in point for this is U.S. Senate Bill 448, which is being debated right now, the Free Flow of Information Act. It's a bill that would create a national shield law to keep journalists from having to reveal sources. But there's a key amendment that's working in it right now that excludes unpaid reporters, bloggers, and citizen journalists. And if nothing else, that would create a legal distinction between types of working journalists. That wouldn't help somebody like Josh Wolf, who was imprisoned for months in 2006 for refusing to turn over footage to San Francisco police. And I think that's scary. So how can local news organizations continue to thrive? Well, you can't please everybody. And when you try, you don't please anyone. So we need to understand what our print and digital customers need and tailor products to fit rather than trying to cast a wide net and sort of like half-assing it through everything. This is an interesting concept here, and especially in a media market where price is pretty much nothing. Value is determined by the customer, so all we really can do is control benefit. But we can do that by creating exceptional products. And it sounds weird, but I'm looking at growing audience through paying attention to the needs of specific groups. And so create products for those who want and need specific information in very specialized ways. We've got more than 100 years in the communities that we serve. That's decades of history and context. And information requires context to make any kind of sense and to be actionable. So putting daily life and its information into context is a valuable service that has value. We need to make user experiences a goal and meet needs and set new standards for being remarkable. Meanwhile, we've got to form partnerships with people like you, people doing good journalism that are citizens, that are non-professionals. And there's a lot of great work that's happening. But networking content requires navigating new territory, especially in regards of sourcing content and revenue sharing, and we'll have to consider agreements for that. Speaking of agreements, we'll need to form new and expanded relationships with our advertisers and with the audience in order to pay for this sort of thing. So if we can create products that cater to more customers and niche audiences, can we attract enough financial support to continue? I think so. I hope so. I'm working towards making that a reality. There's a lot of work to do, but I can't think of a better time to do it. I was talking to somebody outside just now. There's never been a golden age of journalism, so why not right now? There's a ton of really cool stuff going on. So please contact me if you've got ideas for services that you need and partnerships to consider. And thank you so very much for listening to me tonight.